Hi guys. First, I wanted to apologize for not having any sound on last week's videos. I was out of town and I just could not find any place that was quiet enough to record. So I hope you were able to figure out what I was doing just by watching. And this week I'm back home, so I have audio, and we're looking at chapter 14, the neoclassical perspective, which is different in a contrast to the Keynesian model. So I sent out your spreadsheet via email, and you can also download it when you open up your assignment 14. And when you open it up, it will look like this. So what we need to do first is we need to fill out we need to use what we have right here for our price levels and our quantities of aggregate supply and demand to create our graph. So let's go ahead and just do that first. But let's just make sure. Let's jump back over to our questions here. So it's asking us to, or I'm asking you to, plot the aggregate supply and demand curves on your graph and determine the equilibrium output and price level. Okay, so that's easy enough. So let's jump back over here. And we just want to come down to this sum just fine, and just go anywhere in this graph area and right click, select data, and come up here to quantity of aggregate supply. We'll do that curve first and click on it. That's a left click, and then just actually don't do that. Sorry, cancel that. We want to add right here. Okay, now we can do it. Series name right here, and then series X values are going to be these guys right here. So this is going to be a vertical curve right at 3,500. So we're going to just click here and then grab all those guys and then click down and then click on our Y series value or series Y values and grab our price levels right here and say OK. And I believe that might do it for that one. Let's just make sure. Yeah. So this is our real or Y or our real GDP on our X-axis or horizontal axis, and our price level on our vertical or Y-axis. And the blue curve here is our quantity of aggregate supply, which is the long-run aggregate supply in the neoclassical model, which is always vertical. Okay, now we need to do it. We need to plot our aggregate quantity of aggregate demand. So we're going to, once again, select data, add, and select our series name, and then click on our series X value grid right here and grab all those values for the horizontal axis, and then click our down arrow right here and then click on the grid again for Y values and select all our price levels and the down arrow again and OK and OK, and voila, there you have it. And so we can very easily see where our equilibrium is. We know it's always going to be in an output of 3,500 right here, because this is what it is, right? And the price level is 90, right? Okay, now we want to do what? We want to, I think, increase something. We want to increase aggregate demand by 500 at every level. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is, and I think, well, you don't have to because you're not going to turn this in, but it's probably easier for you just to do all three of these aggregate demand curves on the same graph. In order to do that, we simply come back over to our graph and go to this column right here where we see higher quantity of aggregate demand. Click in the first one and then come up to our formula bar right here, type in equals, and we're going to take our original quantity there, which is in cell F3, and just type in plus 500. Enter. There you go. Click on that and then come down to the right hand lower corner, get your black cross right there, the black solid cross, left click, hold, and drag. And there you go. Now we have our higher quantity of aggregate demand curve in our table. Now we just simply need to add it into our graph. So we're going to come down here, select Data, Add, and take the higher quantity of aggregate demand series name. Click on Series X values grid right here, and select all those values. And then click on the Y series value grid and select the price levels again. Click the down arrow, the red one, OK, and OK. And now we have our higher aggregate demand, and I believe you're being asked, what is the output and price level? Well, you know the output's going to be, it's going to be the same, 3,500, but the price level has moved up to 95. Okay, now let's jump back over to the questions we're being asked. Now we're going to assume that the aggregate demand decreases by 500 from the original at every price level. Now what is the new equilibrium output and price? And you should know without doing anything that the output is going to be 3,500, but we want to see what the price level is because that's the only thing that's going to change. So let's jump back to the graph you're working on and come over to this column right here, and we're going to subtract 500 from our original values right over here. So we're simply going to click in the first cell, which is I3, and come up to our formula bar equals the original value in F3 minus 500 now. Enter. Okay. And then we just simply find our black cross, left click, hold, and drag. And now we have all those values. And we just simply need to add that curve in. So we're going to select Data, Add, Series Name, the lower quantity of aggregate demand, X values, click on the grid, select all of those, click on the down arrow, and click on the grid for Y values. Once again, select the same price level column. Down arrow, OK, OK. And there you have it. So we can see now that at this lower aggregate demand curve, our price level is 85. Our output is still, no surprises there, 3,500. Okay. Now, question number 4. After looking at your answers for questions 2 and 3, would you suggest using aggregate demand to alter the level of output or to control any inflationary increases in the price level? Well, you certainly would say no to output, because no matter what we do with our aggregate demand curve, no matter where it shifts, our output is unchanged because of our vertical long-run aggregate supply curve in the neoclassical framework. So trying to alter aggregate demand is not going to change output at all in this framework. However, we can certainly change price levels, right? So the answer, I think the answer I know. Actually, I don't have any answers in here at all, so how about that? The answers, I'm not sure why, but I will say this. I will go to your assignment, because I'm sure the answers are here, yeah. So no matter how the aggregate demand curve shifts, you're always going to have the same output, in this case 3,500, because of the vertical aggregate supply curve. Aggregate demand cannot affect output in this case. It can only affect whether inflationary increases in the price level occur. So you can impact price level by changing your aggregate demand, but not output. Okay. And you can already see the answers. I know that. Please don't just freeze your video right now and just copy the answers and you're done, right? Now listen to what I'm going to tell you, because this is important. It's important to understand how you find these answers, because if you don't, you might end up struggling on the quiz and especially on the AP exam. So let's make sure we understand answers 5 through 8 and not just get the answers, okay? So 5 is, we're going to assume that workers in this economy emigrate, E-M-I, emigrate, which means leave the country in large numbers because there are better jobs north of the border. Okay, so workers are leaving. In which direction will aggregate supply curve shift? Well, we've learned, and hopefully you've learned, that one of the things that can shift aggregate supply is a change in the labor supply of the country or number of workers. So if workers are leaving, that's going to lower the labor supply in the country, which is going to shift the aggregate supply curve to the left. And the next question is, will this shift, and now we know that it's a leftward shift, will this shift raise or lower the economy's output? Well, if we're shifting to the left without even looking at the graph, and remember this is a vertical long-run average supply curve, if it shifts to the left, we should know without even looking that it's going to lower output. And will it raise or lower the economy's price level? Well, it probably would help to look at the graph for that. And if you want to, you can simply change this. Let's say we are going to lower it, and let's look at our original price level here of 90, right, with an output of 3,500. If we lower this to 3,000, which is easy to do with your a spreadsheet, which is going to shift your aggregate supply curve left, you can see that our new price level is 95. See, it was, whoops, it was 90, I think. Let me just make sure there. See, it was 90 right here with the red and the blue, and if we shift it over to the left, it's going to raise price levels. It's going to, depending on the curve, the demand curve, how elastic the demand curve is and how far we shift over. But if you shift it all to the left with any type of a demand curve at all that's downward sloping, you're going to raise price levels. Okay? Now, next we're asking, let me jump down to where we're asking. Where are we asking? Asking over here. We're saying, okay, now let's assume that new technologies are developed that enable this economy's production to be more efficient, which means produce more at less cost. So we should know that new technologies are one of the things that can happen in a country that can shift, that can actually make the long-run average supply, long-run aggregate supply shift to the right, because you're going to be able to produce more at the same cost, or produce more, in this case, at even less cost. So that's going to shift our curve to the right. And is this shift going to raise or lower output, and will it raise or lower the economy's price level? And I think in your homework I made that two separate questions. Actually, in which direction will they shift? Did I actually put that? Let me just check something here. Well, I should have asked you here, right? I should have asked you, well, which I did in your homework, so when I transferred this over or whatever. So anyway, I'm asking you, in which direction will it shift, and it shifts to the right, and what will it do in terms of output and price level? Okay, let's jump back over here. So now let's go ahead and say that we are going to shift to the right. So that means, so let's look again. Where we are right now at 3,500, we're at a price level of 90. Okay, so let's just plug this in. You can see, you probably see it, of course, without even doing this. It just makes it obvious. If we shift to the right, well, obviously output's going to go up. In this case, we increase output to 4,000. And price level drops from 90. It was right here, right? And it dropped from here down to here to 85. So price level is going to drop. Okay, so let me go back to your homework. Yeah. So it will raise output and lower a price. So this makes perfect sense. If you have more advanced technology that lowers a cost, you're going to be able to produce more, and since the cost is less, that will be reflected in lower price levels. Okay, so that is your homework for Chapter 14. And I just remind you that this will not, this is the last homework that's going to count. The last homework and quiz that's going to count on your first semester is through Chapter 13 and through discussion 12. Okay? And I send an email out about that. All righty.